In a short time, Necromancy has proven itself to be a powerhouse in RuneScape 3 combat. A lot of players, myself included, are shattering old bossing times using Necromancy, even with below maxed gear. And that's awesome, but Necromancy has also proven that this is only really possible with a lot of manual input, aka close to full manual combat, far from full revolution that a lot of players, also like myself, are more used to. The most powerful Necromancy combat abilities can't really be placed on a Revo bar and used very well, such as Finger of Death and Bloat, so where does bossing with full Revo stand? Let's take a look at bossing and let's see if full revolution with Necromancy can compete with other styles in full revolution. Good day, everybody. To answer the burning clickbait in the video title, yes, full revolution necromancy is viable at a lot of bosses, at least comparable to full revolution with the other combat styles. That's the short and sweet of it. As I alluded to earlier, you're going to be sacrificing a lot of the more potent abilities that Necromancy offers, so your kill times will be a lot slower than if you are full manualing it or at least semi-manualing it. So in this video, I played around with a few bosses, namely Kerapac in normal mode, Hermod, and the Glacor in normal mode with all mechanics, to compare my typical semi-manual rotation that I've gotten used to with Necromancy versus a fully revolution rotation to see what kill times are like and compare and contrast those. I'm also going to compare these kill times to past kills I've made of the same bosses, namely the Glacor and Kerapac with my best melee gear, which is like a Scourge and tier 88 offhand, so whatever, tier 92, tier 90-ish. Power armor set up with a Jaws of the Abyss, so we can see where Necromancy stands compared to that, and so that full Revo players can have something to go off of at least if you're struggling to do some PVM with Necromancy. One last thing I'll say before we jump straight to test results is that this testing is less robust, I think, than my other testing videos that I made. That's because as I was going through these rounds of testings, I limited my kills per setup to 5 kills instead of 10 kills on each boss per setup like I usually do in my other testing videos. And also I was kind of discovering new things and changing my setup and changing my full Revo bar as I went through to be a little bit more optimal, as I found. Results you'll see here have a little more anecdotal value than usual and less statistical value than usual. Take that however you will. Anyways, let's get right into it. My first test subject was Kerapac, and this is where I did the most adjusting to my full Revo bar at least. I started off with my semi-manual setup that I am now pretty comfortable with. There's only these abilities on my full Revo bar. Everything else is hotkeyed, and the base strategy is that I lead with, well, first of all, I pre-summon all the conjures. So I summon the zombie, the ghost, the skeleton, and I activate the ghost's command. This is because the ghost and the zombie usually cost adrenaline to summon, but if you didn't already know this, if you conjure them outside of combat, the adrenaline cost is 0. This is liable to be changed in the near future. I don't know how that will look, but for now, this is the situation. Also, the ghost's command is extremely powerful. It's like a mini Sunshine or a Berserk for every damage source up to a certain little cap, but it increases the damage output by a lot against your target for as long as your ghost is alive. Anyways, it usually costs 70% adrenaline, and this is also free if you cast this outside of battle, so it is huge to do that before the battle if you're going to go a little bit manual with it. So, step 1, once the battle actually starts, for my setup here, is basically to lead with a Death Skulls, then get adrenaline back up to 100% as soon as possible, hit a Living Death, and then Death Skulls as often as possible under Living Death. Without adrenaline potions or anything fancy like I am not using here, you can get off 2 more Death Skulls while you are under Living Death in those 30 seconds, and then you'll have, once you're out of Living Death, once it's over, you'll have 1 more Death Skulls readily available, because the cooldown of Death Skulls while you're in Living Death is 12 seconds instead of a whole minute. And I'm able to get off that many Death Skulls because I do have the Zook cape for this. I wouldn't say it's required, the cape, for any of the bosses I'm doing here, but it will definitely make things a lot better for you if you have it. Anyways, after that rotation is done and I've fired off as many Death Skulls as I can, in the meantime, I am looking at my little Spirit Dots gauges. I have 3 that can fill up because I don't have a Soulbound Lantern, so whenever those fill up, I manually fire Volley of Souls. Whenever my Necrosis stacks are at least 6, I fire off a Finger of Death. And whenever I remember to, I also use a Bloat if I have spare adrenaline, because that does good bleed damage. So it's not very complicated, it's not optimal certainly, but it's my semi-manual rotation. And this is what the numbers look like at Kerapac doing that. I'm able to skip a lot of mechanics. Lightning Wall is for sure skipped every time. Only when my Death Skulls ran out, I was not able to skip the Jumping Slams, but either way, those didn't last very long when he did get to them. and then the final phase was a joke. So that's what a semi-casual, semi-manual rotation at Kerapac looks like with the gear that I have here, which, by the way, I'm going to describe my gear and setup in the description of this video because I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it. It's not that important, honestly. The next thing I wanted to test at Kerapac is a full revolution setup, recommended as per PVME and found on the RuneScape wiki page. But I wanted to test this with pre-conjures, so full revolution during the fight, but before the fight I'm still conjuring the zombie, the ghost, the skeleton, and I'm activating the ghost's command, just to see what kind of a difference it makes once I get into the fight and then have full revolution. So the main difference here is that I am not re-conjuring the ghost when it runs out during the fight. In my semi-manual setup, I am re-conjuring the ghost when it runs out, and when I have surplus adrenaline, I'm even firing off the command again if I think it's worth it. With this full manual setup, with the pre-conjures, the ghost and the other spirits eventually run out, and then the only one that comes back is the skeleton because it's at the front of the Revo bar, because that command is extremely powerful, by the way. Everybody should know that. And here's what those kill times look like for those 5 kills. Basically added a minute onto my kills from about a minute 45, a minute 50 to about 2 minutes 45 or 2 minutes 50. So substantially worse. As mentioned before, this is because I'm not leveraging Finger of Death or Bloat. You cannot put those on your Revo bar. They have no cooldown and they will keep eating up all your adrenaline as soon as they're ready to go off, and then you'll have no more adrenaline for other more useful abilities. It is also worth noting that with full revolution, the powerful abilities, the only really powerful ability you have on your Revo bar here, which is Death Skulls, can fire off at really inopportune times, especially at Kerapac, because Kerapac actually spends a lot of time being invulnerable. Between every phase, he spends a buttload of time being invulnerable to any damage. You can still keep attacking him, because Soul Split will still work to heal you and things like that, but any Death Skulls or any strong ability fired off while he's phasing are completely wasted. Also, because you have to stay close to Death Skulls for it to bounce back and forth between you and the target, when Kerapac is doing his jumping slam, which you will not get around or you will not phase past if you're using full Revo because you can't do enough damage in time. If you use the surge trick, the traditional way to get out of the jumping slam, you will actually surge yourself too far away for Death Skulls to keep bouncing. So there were a ton of times here in my full Revo run-throughs where I'd fire off with Death Skulls, but then he'd be jumping slamming, so I'd have to surge, and Death Skulls would only end up bouncing like one time, which is a huge waste of damage. That's the biggest factor in why there's such a big difference here. With full revolution like this, the bulk of your damage comes from the skeleton and its command, and then the volley of souls whenever you have a few souls built up. That's about it. The pre-conjured ghost and ghost command before the fight started add a little bit of a boost at the beginning, boosting damage from all sources. The zombie is not that useful, to be honest, but Kerapac is poisonable, so whatever, it does a little bit something, but honestly it's not the most, even in the semi-manual setup I had, it's not the most influential part of the setup. So all things considered, this is a roughly tier 90, you could say halfway to tier 95 setup I have here. It is possible to get worse or the same kill times with tier 90 gear in the other styles, like Mage or Magic. At least if you're new to Kerapac like I was getting longer than 3-minute kills with the Nox spell when I first started Kerapac. So although it's substantially worse than the more manual input kills, the same goes for all combat styles, and I wouldn't say that Necromancy Full Revolution here, it falls behind other combat styles. So far, not bad. I tried one other loadout, one other little Revo bar change at Kerapac, which was the full revolution suggested bar from PVME, but I added the ghost in there. I tried a few kills with just the full revolution bar recommended by the wiki, PVME, whatever, with no pre-conjured spirits. And it was rough. I was eating a lot. It turns out the ghost is really important at healing you, especially at Kerapac, and especially in the last phase when he hits you really hard. The ghost is important, so I added that to the recommended bar here. A little bit towards the front, but after Death Skulls, make sure you do that so that Death Skulls fires off first. The thing that I figured here, and that I wanted to test out, is that with this full revolution bar, because we're not using a lot of adrenaline consuming abilities at all, most of the time after you fire off Death Skulls, your adrenaline bar is going to be pretty much full. So even if mid-fight you reconjure the ghost and spend 70% adrenaline using its command, because full revolution like this does not need adrenaline saved for other abilities because we're not using them, it doesn't really matter. So here's what the results of that look like. At Kerapac, we can see that there is a minor improvement in kill times, but as I alluded to earlier, the kills went much smoother. I didn't eat any food at all because the ghost was regularly up. I didn't pre-conjure anything also. I didn't pre-conjure the skeleton or ghost, and I didn't use the zombie at all in this loadout. By the way, never have the zombie on your full Revo bar, because when you summon it, its command is that it explodes, and it doesn't cost any adrenaline to do so. So typically, if your zombie's on your full Revo, it'll explode shortly after it's summoned, and that's does a chunk of damage, but it's pretty useless and it's not great. For the other bosses tested, instead of the pre-conjuring setup with full Revo, I just went with this one. Pre-conjuring is not really friendly to full revolution anyways. If you are really looking for full revolution, I figure, for bosses, you're probably not willing to go stretch far enough to pre-conjure everything and do all that complicated stuff. So I just added the skeleton and ghost to the bar, and it seems like it works out about the same. Again, to recap a little bit, these kill times are actually a little bit better than some of my first full revolution, magic, and ranged Kerapac kills I ever did, so not terrible, with similar tiers of gear. Next up, we must test on Hermod, the Necromancy training dummy that teaches you how to dump the most damage possible with Necromancy while dealing with some minor mechanics. So for starters, here's my personal baseline with my semi-manual rotation. Now, Hermod is a bit of a shorter fight than like Racial or Kerapac even, so the rotation changes with every kill. It's not as worth using Living Death at him every kill, especially since the cooldown of that thing is 1.5 minutes, which is 3 times the length of my average kill here with this setup. I used different rotations here, so once I tried Living Death, and after the first Death Skulls, then I just did a Death Skulls and just blasted him with Finger of Death and all this stuff, so I tried different things. I did not use Living Death every kill. Kill times were still relatively consistent, and on average, 32 seconds. For the full revolution setup, I am using the bar that I finalized at Kerapac that includes both the skeleton and the ghost in it, otherwise the same as the wiki and PVME's recommendation for single target full revolution. The average kill times here were about 49 seconds, not terrible for being full revo, but this is almost double the duration of my kill times with the more manual input. So straightforward results, not bad. Hermod won't hurt you too badly, especially if you have the tier of gear that I'm using. Just your kills will go a lot faster if you're willing to do a bit more manual input, even a Finger of Death or Volley of Souls. That's what it looks like at Hermod. No conclusion neither here nor there. It's about as expected. Full Revo does the job. There are no special mechanics that, unlike Racial, where full Revo is almost impossible, just a little bit less efficient than more manual input. The last test subject was the screw it, Glacor. I hate that guy's name. I always recommend this one, and I always use this one for testing videos, or I do quite often. I recommend it for learning boss mechanics, especially if we're talking about weaning off of full Revo, because even with just the non-hard mode, but normal mode with all mechanics enabled Glacor, you can't full Revo it. You have to at least throw down a resonance or shift your tactics a little bit to deal with the minions. So here are the times for the full Revo versus my semi-manual method. So here, the results are a little bit more scattered. That's because the one fun thing about this boss is that some mechanics waste your time more than others, and they come out randomly. So there were some very long and very short kill times with both setups. However, the overall average is, of course, that my semi-manual setup gets the job done faster. Some kills were much faster than others in my semi-manual input way of doing things because, I mean, there is value to DPSing through a boss like this because the faster you kill it, the less time you give it to throw time-wasting mechanics at you. So basically, the shorter kills were ones where the Glacor didn't get to, like the minions or the ice beams, whatever the mechanics that take a long time. And the longer kills are the ones where he did. Anyways, kill it faster, it'll throw down less mechanics. That's the gist here. That concludes the testing and figuring out of a bossing Revo bar. My conclusion here is that full Revo Necromancy is definitely suboptimal compared to more manual ways of doing things. Even full manual, which is relatively easy compared to the other styles to do, will get you much better results. However, when comparing with full manual of similar tiers of other combat styles, melee, ranged, and magic, it's not bad and it holds up. In some cases, I think it is a little bit better. Part of the point of running these tests is because in my last video, it was my guide to Racial, and I pointed out that it's pretty much impossible to full manual that boss, and there was a lot of upset from players and viewers that there's not really a way to full revolution that guy like there is with Hermod or others. So I really just wanted to set about and fight other challenging bosses as well. Obviously not the most challenging that you can't full revo any style like Zook or Zamorak or whatever, but these ones, Kerapac, the Glacor, Hermod, that you can full revo with other styles except Hermod, just to show that you can also do this with Necromancy and it doesn't fall behind the other styles. That's all I wanted to show. That's what I hope to see, and I think that is what I did see here today for you all. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel if you want to see more helpful guides or testings like this. If you have your own full Revo setup or any setup having to do with Necromancy, please comment. I'm still new to Necromancy, I mean new-ish myself, it's a new skill, and I haven't been hammering it that hard PVM-wise, and I'm not that elite of a PVMer anyways, so if you have better suggestions for full Revoing or manualing than what I have here, yeah, please let everybody know. Alright, thanks everybody for watching, I appreciate you very much, and I'll catch you in the next one.